Welcome everyone to another episode of Unscripted Coding. This one is a follow-up to a previous video, so if you haven't watched that, do check it out. It's in the description, and we basically use Claude to create this very simple game. There was no coding required, you just had to talk to the AI chatbot and give it some ideas of where it should go. Now, if you're thinking you need no programming whatsoever, that's not really true. You do need to know kind of what you're doing, kind of what your idea is, but it took out all of the painful aspects of writing the code, getting it to work. And so I wanted to follow up and show you what I've done afterwards, but also go through my experience a little further in with Claude. First of all, let's really quickly go over the game again. This was the last version you saw in the previous video, and the idea is really simple. There are a bunch of tomb raiders, archaeologists, whatever, trying to break into the Pharaoh's chamber, and you as an architect have to plan ahead by laying down different traps. Now, obviously, these are bare minimal type of things. They're just blue and red squares. But what happens is we can start level, characters spawn, and they are stopped by any color that is not their own. And so in this case, all three of these will get stopped by the green. I'm hoping that a green monster will spawn soon. Here you go. It goes through, but it gets stopped by the next one. And so there's a certain level of strategy to try and layer out the right traps. And again, lots of ways we can build out clever puzzles. Maybe these traps shouldn't just stop one type. There are different combinations, better animations, better images, all of that. But as a proof of concept, you can see this is basically a tower defense. You have gold, you're trying to stop a number of waves before you get to the end. Okay. So, we saw a very long conversation to get to this point, but we probably ended at about halfway or so. There are a couple of things that I've noticed working with Claude Artifacts I wanted to talk to you about. I certainly went further and further here, so I'm just going to skip ahead a couple versions. This one isn't functional, so I might have to go a bit further out. Still looks very similar here, so maybe not the best idea. But I kept talking to it to add little bits and pieces to it. So I thought we'd change how the gold gets apportioned after every stage. I changed so that when you lose, there's a clearer lose screen. When you win, put a cap at level 20, let's say. A variety of little things to, polish up the game, basically. What happened was that the code turned from about 200 lines or so, where Claude was really good at giving you all of this code that runs in a single page, and it started being lazy. And a lot of people mention that, AI gets lazy after a certain bit. The problem is that Claude can't just output unlimited lines of code. And so by the end of it, when we were pushing 500, 600, 700 lines of code, it started suggesting what to change instead. And what you'll find is that it started setting up little bits of JavaScript files that just have a portion of it. Now, given how Claude is created, this artifacts, it's not really clear. So in this case, you get a piece, and you say, it might say, okay, these aren't great examples, but rest of the function remains the same here. I should zoom in a little bit. Meaning that for an end user, it's not obvious, especially when it was still embedded in that HTML file. it just stopped working at version, let's say, 42. And you're just scratching your head and asking Claude over and over, why isn't it working? And then when you actually dig into the code, you realize it skipped huge sections of it to keep its response within the limit. And so at a certain point, I'd say about 500-600 lines of code, it stopped being reliable because it started either skipping sections or just giving you single functions instead of the whole document. The other thing that I've noticed is that this runs in a sandbox, which perfectly fair, makes perfect sense. But Claude doesn't know that. And so it starts suggesting things like local storage and cookies that create console errors. And you're just, again, scratching your head because you don't understand why it's not working. But when you download the file, it starts working. So those are little bits and pieces I've noticed about Claude. It's really, really good. So I think it is absolutely amazing for getting to something workable, something that's visually appealing and getting your broad ideas out. But at a certain point, the game stops functioning all in this sandbox, and you need to start pulling it into VS Code or some other software so that you can start coding and looking at the code. And so I wanted to show you guys what we've done here. At this point, there is 176 lines of code, but I had to break out the styling and the body from the JavaScript. And so here is another 430 lines, and this is stretching past that 500 line limit. And just to show you what was able to be done in pretty short order, actually, I'd say I put in another hour or so on top of the 15 minutes, and we could probably do this quicker, is this version. Again, it looks kind of similar, but you're going to see that, number one, we have bigger boxes. It's been changed a little bit to make it functional. I also threw in some AI-generated images. I was hoping to get this kind of pixely look to it. And everything's still placeholders, but it's really important because it was working with these SVG graphics before. Square. You want to make sure that the images are correctly shown. You'll also see I really like the animations I've done for these sprites. Now, obviously, I don't know why Charmander, Squirtle, and Bulbasaur would be in Egypt. These are clearly placeholders, but I really like that Claude helped me do some of these animations so that, Pikachu is jumping and Bulbasaur is like shuffling around and getting stopped by this trap. Over time, I wanted to make sure that the images look okay and that it makes sense, but these don't look great. The look I was going for is this Valley of the King's Tomb, where it's kind of white and gray, and these very minimalist chambers, and so we can have almost blank squares and just show spikes at the bottom or a statue in the middle or something very, very plain and simple. Also, what's important is I talk to Claude a lot, and if you're wondering where the 200, 300 extra lines of code are, I've really set it up so that the red traps and the blue traps and the green traps are going to be changeable so that they accept different types. So Pikachu and Bulbasaur may be able to walk through a green trap, and that the code makes sense and is very easy to switch these over time. There's a life system, there are different gold tweaking, the balance is completely off, but I think the coolest thing is that Claude has made this a progressive web app. And this is where you are seeing the service worker and web manifest here. I didn't realize it was so incredibly simple to do so. I've never done one of these progressive web apps, but if you're not familiar with the term, what this means is once I upload this onto a website somewhere, yes, it is not an app for your phone. It's not going to be on the Google Play Store. It's not going to be on iOS, Apple's App Store, but it's one of those where you go to the website and there's a little icon at the top that says install this on your phone, and it saves an app icon on your screen. You could click into it, it runs without the browser's header, and it'll look like this. I still have to tweak the look because this is a bit tall for most phones, so I'll have to adjust the ratio, but this was designed for phones in mind. And if you were annoyed that Claude does so well with HTML and JavaScript but not APKs or Android apps or iOS apps, one quick, easy way to do this is ask it to make it into a progressive web app. So you can go on the site, you can install it right off the bat, and that worked flawlessly on Claude. I'm going to stop here. Again, we're not doing so much hard coding, but I think it's important to talk through this amazing tool. If you haven't tried Claude Artifacts, this was so much fun because you can watch it being built. You're just telling someone to build it out, and you don't have to do all the grunt work, and I love it. You might want to build a game that is fairly sophisticated, but I can imagine workplaces that this will do fantastic. You don't need 500 plus lines to build a simple tool that will always split up text for you, that will always parse out certain documents, that will change PNG to JPEG files, whatever. All of those will be very short, and you can put it right on here. So I'm really excited, and apparently Poe, another chatbot aggregator almost, is building something similar as well. So this might be the future. I'm going to stop here. I hope there's some valuable information here because it's not all smooth sailing. But if you are aware of these things and you kind of set your expectations right, Claude is so much fun to play with. All right, I will see you next week with yet another project. Thanks for